So let's cultivate our motivation. And in the process of giving and taking, we've been meditating on giving our body possessions and merit to sentient beings so that they have all the conditions necessary to practice. And so reflect on our own fortune in having these conditions and the tragic condition of others to not have the conditions to practice. And so, of course, out of compassion, we, in this meditation, imagine giving our body possessions and merit to them so that they have the conditions. But while we have the conditions, we have to ask ourselves if we're really taking advantage of them, or if we're just spinning our wheels. Because it's possible to have very good conditions to practice, but the mind has a lot of resistance to change, and so we don't really try to change our bad mental habits. So we have to keep an eye on that, make sure we use our good fortune wisely and with the appreciation it deserves. And especially use it to cultivate the bodhicitta, the aspiration to attain full enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And so let's cultivate that right now. Okay, so there were a couple of questions that I received during the week, and I thought to speak about those first before we get into the teachings. Actually, one's a comment, not a question, that I thought I would share with you. And so someone said, when doing the meditations on offerings to the being in the six realms, having to think of what they might need forced me to really think in more depth about the various types of ongoing dissatisfaction and sufferings that are being experienced in these realms. Making these offerings made me wish that I could really offer that level of comfort to ease the suffering of others, that I had enough compassion and wisdom to be able to do so right now, even on a conventional level. Yeah. So as a result of doing this meditation on taking and giving, really reflecting on the various sufferings in these realms, and instead of just kind of glossing over them, really putting your mind in that kind of state and seeing what it would be like, and then developing compassion and the wish to benefit. And that's exactly how we should be doing it. It's not just, oh, those beings suffer in that other realm, too bad. I'll practice taking and giving, but really contemplating their sufferings and knowing that we've had those same situations ourselves before, and we could have them again if we don't practice in a suitable way. And so therefore not being smug. And then could I have a tissue? In the motivation, I just, thank you. I mentioned this thing of sometimes spinning our wheels. It's like we say, I'm practicing Dharma, and I'm doing this practice, and I'm doing that practice. And yes, I have a problem with attachment, I have a problem with jealousy, I have a problem with this and that. But we don't actually apply the antidotes, you know? And we're not really trying to change those mental habits. No. We'll meditate on Chenrezig and send light out to others, and the light comes back and everything. But we don't really try and do anything with our attachment. We just kind of accept it as a given. Yeah? Or we don't really try and do something with our anger. We just say, well, yeah, I'm working on it. But are we really? Okay? So, you know, this whole way that our mind becomes kind of resistant to change. We've talked about this, you know, before. And a little bit resistant to change, wanting to change, but we seem to have the same problem every year after year after year. Yeah? So, of course, you know, our problems don't go away instantaneously, but we should, you know, try and see if there's some progress. Things are not going to change immediately, but, you know, are we really, if we have a problem with attachment, are we really meditating on the antidotes to attachment? Or are we just letting our attachment sit there and be very comfortable, yeah, while we meditate on something else? Yeah, you getting what I mean? Yeah. And so to really kind of make sure that we're trying to actually recognize the afflictions and then do something about them, not just kind of, you know, sit there. Okay? So I think what this person was doing is quite good, you know, in their practice. Then the other one here is a question, and it said, it's about attachment to those who have died, in particular a child. Of course, it could be, you know, anybody else, a child or anybody else. So the person's saying, it seems that it would dishonor the love for the child not to grieve and mourn for a long time. Does attachment after death show the amount of care for the deceased? We could, you know, we don't need somebody to die to ask that question. We can say, does attachment while the person's alive show the amount of care that we have for them? Okay? Now, in ordinary society, you know, kind of attachment equals love. Missing somebody means you love them. Worrying about them means you love them. Okay? Grieving, if they have misfortune, means you love them. Being upset if you don't get to see them as often as you want to means you love them. No, I remember when one of my nieces was very little, and we were writing a little note on the computer together, and I realized by how she was wording a sentence that in her mind, I love you and I miss you, had the exact same meaning. You know? And then I began reflecting, and I see in many families, I love you and I worry about you are synonymous. Yeah? In other words, we feel that if we don't worry about somebody, it means we're cold-hearted and we don't care. And if we don't miss somebody and long to be with them, it means that we have no heart. And when somebody dies, if we aren't just completely besides ourselves with grief and unable to function, it means we didn't care about them. We have these kind of notions in our mind, don't we? You know? They're there, in there. We have a lot of conditioning for this. Of course, it was never said straightforwardly in our family, but that was kind of the message. And so then we doubt our affection and our care for other people because maybe we don't miss them as much as we think we should, or we don't worry about them as much as we should, or we don't grieve them, you know. Like this person's question, wouldn't it dishonor the love we have for a child not to be in deep grief and mourning for quite a long time? Okay? So from a worldly viewpoint, those things are all synonymous. And of course, we don't like to think of ourselves, and we aren't cold-hearted people, you know, so we just think, yes, I worry, and I miss, and I grieve, and I mourn, everything. But, you know, I think there's different ways of missing people, different ways of mourning and grieving, okay? Worry, I don't think has any particular benefit. You know, I don't think there's two kinds of worry. You know, there's just worry that is plain old, you know, like one of those whipping machines. It just goes around in the circle and doesn't get anywhere. You know, because you never break out of it. You don't do anything when you worry except worry. Do you? Yeah, when you worry, you don't do anything. You just sit there and worry. Okay. But in terms of missing, there's missing somebody because you're really attached to them and you're longing for them and you feel like my life isn't whole and complete without them, and they're somebody special to me and I'm somebody special to them. That's one kind of missing, and I think that's the missing that is imbued with clinging, you know, and exaggeration. And then there's the missing of, you know, when somebody's been a mentor to you or somebody who has helped you a lot, and you have a lot of gratitude for that person, you know, and you miss having their influence in your life because you see that they really helped you to become a better person, okay? Can you feel the distinction in your heart? Yeah, between like missing a mentor who has really helped you grow and missing somebody that you're attached to because you just want to be with them because your identity is hooked up with them and they're important to you and you're important to them, and you think you need to have this kind of grief and clinging. Okay, so I think there's different ways. So, no, I don't think that it dishonors the love that we have for a child if we don't stay in grief and mourning and upset for a long time. Yeah, I think, you know, grieving is a natural process. I heard somebody define grieving as adapting to a change that we didn't choose. Yeah, so that's a nice definition, isn't it? Adapting to a change that we didn't choose. Because when we choose the change, then we don't have any grief. So it's very interesting. In a divorce, usually, you know, both people are changey, you know, there's a big change. But one person initiated the divorce, so they're not so much grieving, and the other person didn't. It's a change they didn't want, and so they're grieving. Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Whether if you want the change, you don't grieve. If you didn't want the change, then you grieve. So it depends on what I want and what I don't want, what I like and what I don't like, isn't it? You know. So, but I think there's different ways to grieve, and some people get. And I think when we grieve, we are actually grieving for the future that isn't going to be as we wanted it to be. The past is over and done with. We can't grieve for the past. When somebody we care about dies, we don't grieve for the past we had with them because that's over and done with, and that doesn't even come back even while they're still alive. Yeah, we don't grieve for the present because it goes by too quickly. But we have an idea of how we wanted the future to be with that person. And that future, which hasn't happened yet, is now not going to happen. And so we grieve the future without that person. You know, so in the case of a child's death, you mourn that you don't get to see them, you know, graduate high school and get married and all these kinds of things. But none of those things have happened yet anyway. None of those things were certain to happen even if the person lived. But we had an idea of what we wanted the future to be, and our expectation wasn't being met, and so we grieve. Okay? So, I think depending upon how much awareness we have, that there's different ways to adapt to that change, and that you don't have to measure your affection and care and love for somebody by the amount of worry, mourning, grief, depression that you have after you're separated from them. Mm-hmm. I remember when one of His Holiness's tutors died. He was very old. This was in Dharamsala in 1981. And Geshe Nawandarge, my teacher, this was one of his main teachers. And, the whole community was in shock, even though Chichen Rinpoche was quite old, and, we knew for a long time that he was going. But Geshe Nawandarge responded in the most amazing way to the death of his teacher. And he taught us that very afternoon. Everybody else is grieving, but he was giving a small class to some of us in the afternoon, and he came, he said, "You come," and he taught us, and he was really radiant, and I had the feeling that for him, of course, he was sorry that his teacher had died and was going to miss him, but he felt so much that it was important to do his teacher's work, which was spreading the Dharma, that's what he did that day. Yeah? And that really stuck in my mind because I was, kind of a baby nun at that time. It made a strong impression on me. Okay? So I think there's different ways to grieve, different ways to react to loss. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now let's go back to our text here. So last time we were talking about giving our possessions, yeah, and that we give our possessions in the same way that we imagine giving our body, transforming them into wish-fulfilling jewels and giving them so that they satisfy the temporal needs of beings while they're in samsara, give them the conducive circumstances so they can gain realizations, and then how we give to the environment, purifying the environment, and so on. And so we give our possessions in the same way. So in here, our body we're really attached to. Possessions maybe we're a little bit less attached to, but it's hard to give our possessions sometimes, isn't it? We think it might be easy, but when push comes to shove, it's actually hard. Mm-hmm. And here we're just visualizing giving them. We're not even really giving them. Yeah, but we visualize giving them so that sometime when the opportunity comes to give them, we will actually give them. But actually giving, we did an exercise, I remember when I was at DFF, and the assignment was to clean out either a closet or a chest of drawers or something and give away the things that you haven't used in a year. And you're smiling, you remember it. And, and then the next week come back and report. And it was so interesting. You were there too. And, some people, they forgot to do the assignment. Some people, I remember one person was telling the story that, she came across a T-shirt that she hadn't worn in years and years and years, but it was from a trip to Mexico that she took 10 years ago. And all of a sudden she had all this nostalgia for the trip, and she just couldn't imagine parting from this T-shirt, even though she had totally forgotten that she had it, and hadn't used it. And we're like that, aren't we? Or some people clean the things out and it got as far as the front door, but not into the car. Or it got into the car, but it didn't get out of the car at Goodwill or, at a charity. It was very interesting, you know. We kind of learned a lot from that. Yeah. So here we're imagining giving our possessions, but we should also try to actually give them as well, and see giving as an opportunity, you know, and as something we gain from, instead of as a loss. Because we usually think if I give it, I won't have it. You know, like me and all my little containers. Somebody today came in the kitchen with, who was it, who had a dropper, a glass with an eyedropper in it. Was it Venerable Samke? And came in and said, you know, should I throw this away? You know, will we ever need it? And I said, if you throw it away, we'll need it, and if you keep it, we won't. Yeah? And so this thing of, you know, well, we really might one day need this bottle with an eyedropper, you know? And of course, there's no other bottles with eyedroppers in the universe. Okay? But, you know, it's sometimes hard for us to give. You know? So we should practice. I remember sometimes when I lived in India, I was very poor, but compared to the Indian beggars, I was rich. And I would walk down to do my shopping once a week past these lepers, you know, and it was only 25 paise in those days to get a cup of tea. Now it's like sometimes even 4 rupees, so big inflation. But it was so difficult for me because I didn't have very much money to separate from 25 paise, which was, you know, maybe 2 or 3 pennies. Yeah. Because you start thinking in Indian currency and, you know, oh, I could have that cup of tea, not them. And there's 4 of them. I can't give to one and not to the other. And then it's a rupee. Oh, a whole dime, you know. Yeah. And so sometimes I really had to push myself to give. But, you know, so sometimes we do need to push ourselves a little bit. And then it's so funny because as soon as you give, you know, usually you forget about the thing. Yeah? Anyway, so the next section is giving away our virtues, our positive potential, our merit, our virtue. So Nam Kapel says, with regard to our bodies and possessions, we can give away what we have and what we will acquire in the future, but not that which has already ceased to exist. So we can give away our present and our future bodies and possessions, but we can't give away our past bodies and possessions. However, the virtues of the past, present, and future are all suitable to be given away. That's because the result of the virtues of the past has not ceased. So we can still dedicate and give away those virtues. The seeds or potencies of past virtues, as well as those of the present and all future virtues up to the attainment of Buddhahood, can be given away. The Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life says, all virtues produced in the 3 times past, present, and future, should be given away without restraint to accomplish the goal of all sentient beings. So without any hesitation, to dedicate our virtue, our merit for the benefit of sentient beings. And some of you may have heard me tell this story before, but when I first went to Singapore, there was one man who asked me to teach him meditation. And I agreed, and I taught him a meditation, and then at the end, I said, we're going to dedicate our merit and give it, you know, imagine giving it away to all the sentient beings. And it was quite remarkable because he had a lot of faith in the doctrine of karma and its results. He really believed in it. And he looked at me and he said, I don't have very much merit. I don't want to give it away. You know? So on one hand, his deep conviction in karma and its effects is really praiseworthy. On the other hand, it was like he was really clinging to this merit, thinking that, if I give it away, then I won't have a good rebirth. Other people will have the good rebirth, not me. Yeah, or they'll attain a liberation, not me. So, I had to explain to him that when we dedicate our merit, it doesn't mean that we no longer have it. That actually dedicating our merit is something that increases the ability to ripen and increases the good results of our virtue. Okay, so don't be afraid to give it away. The Master Nagarjuna says, by this virtue may all beings gather the collections of merit and wisdom, and as a result of that merit and wisdom may they achieve the two sublime bodies. This is a different translation of the same verse that we say every day after lunch, which of course now my mind is going blank. What's the verse? I think it's the last one. You want to pull out a sheet? Well, it's not only me who goes blank. Due to this virtue, may all beings complete the collections of positive potential and wisdom. May they attain the two Buddha bodies resulting from positive potential and wisdom. Okay, so that's the verse. Yeah. So the two collections of merit and wisdom, which lead to the two Buddha bodies, the Dharmakaya and the Rupakaya, the truth body and the form body. And so, by whatever virtue we create, may all beings attain these two bodies of the Buddha. And the question of Ganganaga Jana Sutra says, may whatever sources of virtue I have be transformed into sustenance for all sentient beings. It's beautiful, isn't it? To think, may all the virtue we've collected become the sustenance of sentient beings. So for the people who need, physical nourishment, may it become that. For the people who need medicine that sustains their life, may it become that. For the people who need spiritual teachers and practices and teachings, may their spiritual longing, be satisfied. May they be sustained spiritually by our dedication of merit. Yeah. And so on and so forth. May we give our merit away so that it sustains the lives of sentient beings. Okay, and when you dedicate, you have to dedicate without any reservation, without any holding back. Yeah, just completely give and rejoice in the merit that you created. All these are ways of giving away virtues, from such weak virtues as the gift of a handful of food to an animal, and intentional good deeds, to such powerful virtues as cultivation of the awakening mind. So giving a gift of food to an animal, feeding our pets, okay, feeding the chipmunks, the squirrels, whatever, is, it's a small virtue, but by the power of our motivation we can make it into a big virtue. Okay? So even from small virtues like that to big virtues of meditating on bodhicitta and really cultivating bodhicitta. We can also open the blinds there. That lets in a lot of light too. Are things settled back there? Because it's kind of distracting for me when, if things aren't working, we'll stop and you'll get them working. But if they're working well, it's very distracting for me when people talk while I'm teaching. Okay, thank you. Okay, so all of our virtues should be dispensed to beings in all the worlds as described above. So how we were giving before, we give away our virtues to all the beings in all the worlds. Think that they each acquire the complete causes and conditions for attaining enlightenment, and with the perfection of the two collections of merit and wisdom, they awaken to enlightenment, possessing in their mind streams the bliss of the perfect body of truth. Okay? So we give away our virtue and imagine that it ripens in all sentient beings attaining enlightenment. Of course, they don't kind of instantly bang get transformed into Buddhas, but we give them all the causes and conditions that they're going to need in order to practice. So this can become a meditation in itself. What are the causes and conditions for enlightenment? You know, do I have those causes and conditions? Am I making use of the causes and conditions if I have them? If I don't have them, how can I gather them together? Okay? So we should meditate on these kinds of things. Okay? Not just, yeah, I give all the merit away and yeah, they have it, but, you know, really thinking, oh, you know, here's somebody who really wants a deep connection with the teacher. Here's somebody who needs a text. Here's somebody who needs a Dharma friend that they can talk to. Here's somebody who needs some encouragement. Here's somebody who needs a translator. Here's, you know, here's somebody who needs a place to practice. Here's somebody who needs, you know, good health because they want to practice and they're having some problems with their health, or whatever it is. And imagine that these people receive all these good conditions and that they make good use of their conditions and attain the result of full enlightenment. Yeah, through our giving our merit. And it's also important when we give our merit to contemplate emptiness and dependent arising at the same time. You know, because with the story that I told you about the man who was hesitant to dedicate his merit, it was because he was grasping it as inherently existent. Yeah, but we should think of, you know, merit as something, you know, that arises dependently and is free of existing from its own side. Okay? And then that kind of helps to seal it. And then we see ourselves as the dedicator, the merit we're dedicating, the enlightenment we're dedicating for, the sentient beings that we're giving the merit to. See all of these things as empty because they're dependent arising, and that that this whole relationship they have of agent, action, and object, you know, that is a dependent relationship in there. Okay. All these are ways of giving away virtues. Oh, I already said that. Okay, all of them should be dispensed to all beings in all the worlds as described above. Think that they each acquire the complete sets of causes and conditions for attaining enlightenment, and with the perfection of the two collections of merit and wisdom, they awaken to enlightenment, possessing in their mind streams the bliss of the perfect body of truth. Okay? Should you wonder what is the use of training in the thought of giving, it is that unless you train from now on, later you will be unable to make even the smallest gift, which will be an impediment. Okay? So if we don't start just training our mind right now, later on, you know, when there's the opportunity to give, we won't have it in us, the ability to give, and then that stinginess and fear becomes an impediment to our practice. So there's this story of the Buddha. There's one old lady, I guess, who was very stingy. So the Buddha had her practice with a carrot, giving the carrot from one hand to the other. Yeah? So it can be a good thing. If there's some object you're very attached to, yeah, pull it out and try giving it to your other hand. And then giving it. Yeah? And then you give it. And you give it. And then you give it. You know? And just play with that a little bit. Yeah, where's the fear? Where's the hard thing when I'm going like that? Yeah, and then how about putting it in another hand instead of in this hand? What's the difference anyway? Yeah? So it's a very interesting exercise for us to do, and you take something out that you're attached to and try doing that. Maybe we should tomorrow all bring something we're attached to lunch and practice doing that before we eat. Okay? Okay, the questions of Subahu Sutra says, if you train the mind to give right away with prolonged familiarity, you will find no difficulty in actually giving away your body and so forth. So if we practice right now, training our mind to give, giving what is reasonable, what we're capable of giving now in a comfortable way, gradually our familiarity with giving will increase, and it will become easier and easier to give things that previously we were unable to give. Okay? So we shouldn't just think, oh, the great bodhisattvas give away their body. I don't want to give away my body. It's going to be too painful. I can't practice the bodhisattva path because I have to give away my body. So don't get into that kind of way of thinking, because the idea is that actually you're not allowed to give away your body unless you're at the level where giving away your body is like giving away a carrot. So we have to train ourselves so we increase our comfort with giving and increase our capacity with giving. It's not a thing where we push and make ourselves give things that we feel like, oh, I don't really want to give, but oh, I'm so bad if I'm not generous, I better give. That's not a suitable motivation for giving. Yeah, it has to be really a gift given out of happiness and joy that we want to give, and so we have to train our mind in that attitude before giving. And that's what this meditation is doing. Okay? So it's not push, guilt trip, this kind of thing. Okay? But the point is here that anything becomes easier with familiarity. So the more we mentally think of giving, and the more we practice physically giving, even in small things, the more familiar we become with giving, and the easier it becomes. And then giving very big things becomes, in our mind, like giving something very small. Our mind doesn't get freaked out about it. The King of Meditative Stabilization Sutra also says, just as the more you analyze something, your conceptions about it increase, so does your mind become acquainted with it. Okay, so this whole idea of familiarization, is what doing something again and again, familiarization enables you to do it. And Aryavira said, however weak is your intention to benefit others, you should always abide by this thought. Whoever has such a thought will bring it to fulfillment. And so that's why even, lots of times we're cultivating our motivation, we're saying, sometimes we're doing our practice, we're saying the same prayer every day. I take refuge in the Buddha and Dharma and Sangha till I am enlightened by the positive potential I create by creating generosity and the other 5 reaching attitudes may attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. And there's like no feeling in it, okay? But the thing is, just by saying it, we are planting some good seed in our mind because we're familiarizing ourselves with the words of some good thought. It's better than sitting there and saying, I want a milkshake, I want a milkshake, I want a milkshake. You're even though there's not much feeling in what you're saying when you say, for the benefit of all sentient beings, still you're saying it. That's planting a seed, okay? And so you need to plant lots of seeds, and then some days it's like, oh my goodness, for the benefit of sentient beings, yes, and some strong experience comes, yeah? So a lot of what we're doing is planting seeds, creating familiarity, yeah, with the idea that everything becomes easier due to familiarity. And that's why I really encourage people, to do your daily practice, even if you feel, it's kind of rote or whatever, because, try and make it not rote, of course. I'm not saying just do it and be rote, but even continue to do it because you're planting these good seeds in your mind. Yeah? And if you aren't even reciting these positive words by rote, what else are you going to be doing? Reading the newspaper about people killing each other? Yeah, shopping online? Which is creating more, which is better for your mental attitude, saying something rotely or shopping online? Okay? So you see what I mean? Just the power of doing it again and again. But like I also said, don't, be satisfied with saying it rotely. Try and, put your mind on the words that you're saying. Okay, the great Chekawa, who's one of the Kadampa Geshis, said the more you're acquainted with it, the more you purify conceptions. Take the help of many examples, such as the 7 generations. So the 7 generations is some conceptual thing that all people are our relatives if they're within 7 generations of us. Yeah. But anyway, the point of this quote is the same, that, the more you're familiarized with, let's say, here it says it, I suppose that it means the emptiness or something like that, the more you purify conceptions. The idea is that familiarization is the key. Okay, in the Jataka, or the birth stories, we read, may all my actions, such as seeing, hearing, remembering, touching, or even conversing, be of benefit to beings, and may I always work to give them peace. So this is like the dedication that we say at the end of the Chenrezig practice and the Tara practice, by the virtue of anybody merely seeing, hearing, remembering, touching.
Anyone who remembers me, touches or talks
to me, yeah, be freed instant from all sufferings and abide in happiness forever. So that's, like that dedication verse. It's also very similar to Lama Zopa's bodhicitta dedication. That's on page 67 of the prayer book. Okay? In this way, by practicing generosity sincerely towards all sentient beings, we can instantly accumulate merit as innumerable as the beings themselves. Okay, so when our motivation is vast, our motivation is to benefit all sentient beings, then the merit is very vast because it's created for the benefit of all sentient beings. Whereas if we have in our mind to benefit one sentient being, the merit is as vast as one sentient being. So that's why we may be doing something to benefit one sentient being, but think that they're representative of all sentient beings. And I'm benefiting this one sentient being in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, so keep the mind quite big. Yeah, and also don't make all sentient beings some abstract concept. Really try and make it quite personal. So when you're sitting in the middle of a traffic jam, look around at everybody and say, these are the sentient beings that I'm dedicating for. Yeah. When you're in a crowded place, an airport or whatever, these are the sentient beings for whose benefit I am doing my daily practice. Okay? Yeah. When you go for a picnic and you sit outside and there's all these different bugs, we have lots of them, different bugs around here, ants and grasshoppers and bees and, who knows what. And these are the sentient beings who I'm trying to benefit when I practice. Yeah. May this wasp, this living being who was born in a wasp body due to their negative karma, yeah, may they be free of lower rebirths forever by the force of my merit. I've sometimes felt that I was probably a flea in in my teacher's shemdap in a previous life. They kind of picked me out and said some mantra, and with their bodhicitta say, may I benefit this one in a future life, and then put me outside. Yeah? I mean, we don't know, do we? We don't know how we have the karma with different beings, and it could have been something like this. I stayed with one friend many years ago in San Francisco, and her flat was filled with cockroaches. And she used to call them her disciples. And she would, say mantra and then dedicate, in a future life, may I be able to teach them the Dharma. Some of you want to do that? Okay. The Precious Garland says, if the merits of speaking thus could be given physical form, it would completely fill the whole of space and even overflow that. This was stated by the subduer Buddha and supported by sound reasons. For just as the number of beings is beyond limit, so is the intention to benefit them. Okay, so again, the same meaning that, if the merit could be given physical form, it would, there's no space in the infinite universe to contain it. And this is because, the merit we create through bodhicitta is as infinite, as countless as all the sentient beings. So it's very powerful, and that's why we try and generate bodhicitta first thing in the morning and remind ourselves of it before we do a practice and before we do anything. Now this part's very interesting. When we use the food, clothes, and so on that we have sincerely dedicated to other beings, if we forget the welfare of others and use them with attachment to ourselves, it is a deluded downfall. Okay, so in the Bodhisattva practice, we imagine giving away our body, possessions and merit. So among possessions, our food, our clothes, our computers, our, whatever. And in our mind, we say, these are all dedicated to sentient beings. You mentally give these things away, and then you think, I will use them for the benefit of sentient beings. In other words, these things are not mine. They belong to sentient beings, and I have the permission of sentient beings to use them for the benefit of, for their benefit. Okay, so we do this in the Bodhisattva practice. A Bodhisattva doesn't go around thinking this is mine and this is mine and this is mine, and that's mine, and I'll take this one too. That's not how a Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva's always, oh, what happened to the clock? Oh, there it is. That I'm giving that to you, and I'm giving that to sentient beings, and I'm giving that to sentient beings, and I'm giving that. That's how we think. So we're trying to become like bodhisattvas. So we're mentally thinking that everything we own, we are mentally giving to sentient beings. They don't belong to us. And that we use them just for the purpose of benefiting sentient beings. It's similar to here at the Abbey. As monastics, we're allowed to possess just a limited number of things. Our 3 robes or 5 robes, a needle and thread, a strainer, our bowl, different things. And like that. And everything else we use here at the Abbey doesn't belong to us personally. It belongs to the Abbey. Even if you have a spare set of robes, you think that you're sharing them with somebody else, or you're waiting to give them to somebody else. Yeah? So it's not my bed and my computer and my lamp and my pair of shoes and my this and my that, because we can my Oh my, you know, can't we? Yeah. But you think that all these things belong to the Abbey, because they do belong to the Abbey. You know, most of what we use, you know, we say repeatedly, the furniture in our room is not our personal furniture. Our bedding, our pillows, our bookshelves, our lamps, you know, all these things are not our own personal things. Yeah? So we use them. They belong to the Abbey. We use them to benefit the Abbey. Okay, the Abbey, we're trying to benefit all sentient beings, so we should have the benefit that we're using, the mind, the attitude that we are using them for the benefit of all sentient beings. But then especially in our own practice too, we think anything that I might consider mine, I give. You know, when you're doing the mandala offering, okay, I offer this universe and everything beautiful in it to the Buddha, and then you go say, this is mine, you can't use it, I don't want to lend it to you. Did you give it to the Buddha, or didn't you give it to the Buddha? It's interesting. It's really putting us, you know, when we're doing the mandala offering, are we even contemplating what we're saying? You know? Or do we really think, oh, here's this big, I'm imagining this big, beautiful, pure land, and I give that to the Buddha, but this is mine. You know? I don't want the big, beautiful, pure land. I want this, you know, this contaminated object. It's mine. What are we thinking, you know? So, you know, we've given everything to the Buddha when we offer the mandala. Okay? In our bodhisattva practice, we give everything to sentient beings. So then, everything we use, we should use with the attitude that this does not belong to me, belongs to sentient beings, and I'm using it for the benefit of sentient beings. Okay? So, what Namkapel is saying here, okay, if we use these things, yeah, that we've dedicated to other beings, and if we forget the welfare of others and use them with attachment to ourselves, it's a deluded downfall. So if after giving, you know, mentally giving all of these things, we think this is mine, yeah, mine, my room, my sheet of paper, my toothbrush, my car, my table, my whatever, book cover, you know, and we use it with that kind of mind, that's called a deluded downfall. In other words, it's a downfall in the bodhisattva practice, and it's deluded because there's a very active affliction in there. Okay? Okay. If you have any difficulty thinking of things to confess, maybe contemplate this one. Yeah? If it is done, if we use it, free from such attachment, but forgetful of others' interest, it's an undiluted downfall. Okay, so the first one, we did it with attachment, okay, and we forget others' benefit. That's a diluted downfall. This one, we're not doing it with attachment, but we're not thinking I'm doing it for others' benefit. Yeah? So we should actually think in the morning, you know, remind ourselves, not only, you know, I'm not going to harm anyone, I'm going to help as much as possible. I'm going to hold the bodhicitta, that everything I use today or consume today, I'm going to consume for the benefit of others. Even if we're just saying this intellectually in our mind, again, it's training. And again, it brings us back, you know, when we're using something to really think, oh, I am, you know, using this for the benefit of sentient beings. I have to be mindful and attentive here. Okay? If you have dedicated a certain thing to someone else who knows it and has taken possession of that thing, and then motivated by self-interest and an intention to steal, you make use of that thing, this qualifies as stealing and is a breach of the vows of individual emancipation, as the Compendium of Training makes clear. Okay, so our monastic vows are the 5 lay precepts. If you have given something to somebody and who, or you mentally have dedicated it and they know it and they have taken possession of the object, but then afterwards you decide, well, I really want to use it, or I really don't want to give it, or whatever it is, and with an intention to, steal it and take it back that you do, then that becomes an act of stealing. Yeah. So, mentally it's very important to be aware of when we have mentally given something away. I mean, that is a case of physically giving it and then taking it back. But even mentally, if we've made in our mind the decision to give something to someone, yeah, and we've really given it mentally to them, and then we decide, no, I want to keep it for myself. That's not so good. Okay? Okay. We should examine how a bodhisattva should behave when he or she makes use of such things. Okay? If we make use of something with the intention of working for sentient beings, will be no moral fault. The Compendium of Training says, there will be no fault if you think I shall use these with the intention of protecting both the possessions and their owner. So the possessions and their owner, sentient beings. Okay? So this is also, we've talked about this before in relationship to the pratimoksha vows, the monastic vows, that, if we misuse property that belongs to the monastery, it's tantamount to stealing that property. Okay? So if we, use up resources, if we use up gasoline or paper towels or soap or whatever in a very careless way, it's abusing the property of the Sangha. It becomes quite heavy karma. So this same thing here, we shouldn't waste things because these things belong to sentient beings. And if you think, in terms of the environment, yeah, that if if we really care about sentient beings, then we've got to recycle, and we've got to reduce our consumption, and we've got to, bring the tote bags back to the grocery store and fill them again and again and again, instead of just getting paper bags and plastic bags each time we go. And we've got to carpool, and we've got to arrange our errands so that we don't go into town so much and drive so much unnecessarily, because the gasoline that we're using, or the wrapping, or the world's resources that we're using, it belongs to sentient beings. It doesn't belong to us. So we have a responsibility to use things wisely. Yeah, and to use what we need for the benefit of others, but not to be wasteful. This is quite important. We shouldn't just intellectually say, I give everything to all mother sentient beings, and then use styrofoam and keep throwing it away, and use plastic and throw it away, and drive here and drive there, and, not try and reduce that. Yeah, we should really put our values into practice as best as we can. Okay. We should examine how a bodhisattva should behave when he makes use of such things. If we make use of something with the intention of working for sentient beings, there will be no moral downfall. Okay, and then we had the quote from the Compendium of Trainings. There will be no fault if you think I shall use these with the intention of protecting both the possessions and their owner. Okay, I think we have to stop here because we're over time. There's just a little bit more in this section. But I think there's enough to think about this time, huh? Yeah? So slowly, slowly.